Right. So, what's up, world? And here today I have Melany Oliver. How are you, Melany?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to have me here. Thank you for having me here. Sorry.
No problem, no problem. And it's an honor to have you on my platform, on our platform. And the reason I invited you here today on this platform is because I thought it'd be a good opportunity for not only myself, but for the rest of my followers to get to know a different type of healing and one that's not so Western based. But before I get into it, you are a graduate from you have a health science degree in complementary therapies from the University of, can you pronounce that for me?
Of Westminster.
Yes. And you've had an interesting childhood and you're working on this project, and I really enjoy what you're doing on Instagram.
Thank you.
So, to talk a little bit about it, what is it exactly that you do, Melany? I know that you live in Dubai. You grew up there, from what I understand.
Yeah.
What type of healing do you do?
So that's a good question because I do a number of different things. I work with energy healing. So I use a combination of Reiki. I've studied also access consciousness, access bars, and do like shamanic style energy healing. But I also use techniques such as EFT and just generally like what I call now just conscious work, guiding people through certain visualizations to help them process, emotions and trauma. I trained also in NLP, so sometimes I'll use an NLP, NLP techniques and hypnosis. So I use a combination of different tools.
How interesting. Here in Westernized culture, because I'm from Miami, Florida, it tends to be a little difficult for people to comprehend sometimes that there's other approaches, especially here where people feed into the whole, I'm going to the doctor and I'm going to get my meds and everything's going to be okay, without realizing that the meds, it's just to prevent the symptoms from appearing. And they don't try and look for an alternate course. So just a couple things. So people know, your website is melany-oliver.com, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Who do you normally work for? Not for, but with. What type of population do you mostly work with?
Mainly women, but I do work with some men, but women who are heartbroken, who can't get over their ex, or who are repeating negative relationship patterns, or they're stuck in toxic relationships, but also who have a lot of childhood trauma.
Okay, childhood trauma, and you do touch upon that on your website a lot. How you want to work with trauma, and I really admire that. That word gets thrown around a lot lately in the field. But can you explain to me what you feel trauma is?
Yeah, so trauma is just a shock to your system. And it doesn't necessarily have to be physical. So I think a lot of people confuse trauma with something physical. But for example, it could be something that you witnessed. So one of my clients, just to share a quick example, one of her traumas was she used to witness her mother get beaten by her father. Nothing ever happened to her physically. She was never beaten, but just the fact of witnessing this event was very traumatic for her. So that was a trauma. And trauma can also be emotional. It can be mental. So emotional and mental abuse. So that's a trauma. So to me, it's just a shock to your system. And it's an event or an experience that you've not processed yet.
And that's interesting that you said that part at the end, not processed yet. And so true. And one of the fascinating things about trauma that we're learning is that it has direct links with development later on. So, like you said, when trauma occurs, there's an immediate brain chemistry change, a neurological change, and sometimes that doesn't really get addressed, and therapists don't really know how to handle it, and that's why you need a skilled clinician.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I brought you on my platform because you said earlier that you're not a psychic, right? And I want to clear that for my audience.
I don't consider myself. I mean, I do get, visions. I'm clairvoyant. Sometimes I to be fair, I do, when clients come in, I get visions of what needs to be worked on, or their little inner child, what age, and the dynamics. I don't consider myself a psychic. I feel I'm more of an empath. Yeah.
And can you explain the difference?
So psychic, so psychic normally is associated with more like visuals. So you get visions and insights through visuals. Whereas my strength is really in emotions. It's feeling emotions. I've had this ability, I guess, since I was very young. I was super sensitive to people's emotions, even though I wasn't aware of it back then. I am now. But I can feel people's unconscious emotions a lot of the times. So emotions that they're not even aware that is stuck in their body. So to me, it's more about, and I feel it in my body. I feel it physically in my body.
And what do you say to people who are obviously going to question that type of approach, but yet I look and there's so many positive results on your page, and of people that have come to see you or that you've worked with that have left the office and they feel satisfied, they'll give you a good review. But what do you say about the people over here on the westernized part of the world where they'll say, oh, where's the science to back that? Or they'll say, oh, she's not using any evidence-based approaches. What do you say to those people? Because you're obviously getting results, but there might not, but some people might question because there's no statistics involved behind it.
Well, you have to come with an open mind and open heart.
Yes.
If you come, like the way that I see it, and I'll have consultations with clients, and before they start with me, if I can feel a sense that they have a lot of doubts, a lot of skepticism, and I don't even start working with them. Because then that's the result that you will get. They're not committed. They're not here, with their heart and soul, like ready to surrender and to really allow themselves to feel and experience. So it's a tough one because I can't prove that I can feel, people's emotions. But often when I work with clients and I start to, basically a lot of them struggle to even describe what they feel. And I describe what they feel for them. When they're struggling, I tend to guide them, but when I can sense that they're struggling, then can I share what I feel? And very often they're like, actually, yeah, that's spot on. You've described it better than me.
And that's so cool because you're actually helping people. But you said they have to believe. So they have to come in with an open mind. They have to be prepared they have to expect the unexpected, be prepared for that. What happened if someone were to respond to you and say, well, that's the self-fulfilling prophecy. Whoever comes into therapy willingly, they're going to see results. Do you have a response for that? And I'm sorry I'm asking you all these challenging questions, Melany, but because this is new to this platform, and I love that my platform gets a chance to hear information regarding this from the other side of the world,
Yeah, sure. And that's actually a really good question. And this is actually one of the elements of, and if you want to heal, is you have to be willing. If you're not willing, then you will not engage your soul, your desire to to heal. But also, like, you can come in and not believe or not have that much faith, but as long as you are willing and open, that's what I want. Does that make sense? Like, you don't have to believe, but just have to be willing.
Whether it makes sense to me, but for whoever it doesn't make sense for, it's obviously working, and I suggest they check out your website because you're getting a lot of positive feedback.
Thank you.
So you had mentioned to me earlier in private that sometimes clients are seeing therapists for a long time, and it's a very similar relationship. It seems like you establish with your client. It's one of trust, which all stems from trust and honesty. Same as a normal therapeutic, scenario or session that I typically have. But instead of myself saying, oh, can I tell you what I feel or what I'm seeing, which is yours is mostly feeling. It's an empath, that's the difference. I would say something along the lines of validating my client's statements or sometimes reminding them of something we've talked about in the past.
Yes.
Breathing reflection, and that's what it stems out. But you had told me in private that sometimes clients that have been seeing a therapist for years, all of a sudden they come to see you. And what is it that they tell you a lot of times, or what's going on with that transition? And so, can you elaborate a little bit on that? And
and I hope that you don't take any offense.
Oh no, please! Oh no, please, no. It's honestly an honor to have you here.
So what I have found with, at least with the clients that I've treated, that I've been to with a psychologist for years, or even a therapist for years, and not really had much results. And after they've come to see me, what I feel is that I'm able to connect to their emotion.
Okay.
And whereas with the therapy, they're engaging their conscious mind, and they've analyzed their issues, they understand the issue, they know what the core is, but emotionally they were not engaged. They were disconnected from their emotions. And what I do in this case is I bring up that emotion and just touch it a little bit with my heart. So I don't know if this is going to make sense to you, but on energetically and consciously, when I'm able to touch from my heart to their heart, their emotion, they feel understood, and they feel that I understand them and I can connect to them, and then the emotions just start to come out. And normally it's a big grieving process, but it's from a place of acceptance rather than from being wounded and I'm a victim.
Okay, and that's very interesting. I mean, there's so many elements to this that from what you said that I would love to get to touch on. Okay, so when I asked you, okay, what's the difference when clients have been seeing therapists and you have clients that have been seeing therapists and they come to see you, and they said that they were disconnected from their therapist. Mm-hmm. And that's very interesting. And they were not only disconnected, but disconnected from what I understood emotionally.
Emotionally, yeah. I mean, they got on with their therapist and had good sort of understanding, but on an emotional level, there was no energetic.
Yes.
I believe energy, and there was no energetic connection emotionally. Yeah, correct.
And even me as a clinician, I will, I do acknowledge that 95% of our thoughts and our actions tend to go on our unconscious. They tend to go unnoticed. It's like a 5% that goes conscious, and that's us right now talking, using our laptops or whatever we're using. That's all conscious. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's very tough to measure that, though, is it not?
Yeah.
It's very tough to measure that part, especially in the science realm that we live in over here. But like I said, you're seeing results. Now, with the therapist, why do you think that is? And I like to have a discussion with you about that. I think feel disconnected from the therapist emotionally. And I can see how that's possible, because here where I practice, I see sometimes the therapist gets so burned out that it almost becomes like, oh, I'm seeing this client, I'm seeing this client, I'm seeing this client. And how many clients did I see in one day? How many service events did I do? Instead of always being strictly about the client. And so I'm wondering how much of a factor that has. But what's your opinion on that?
Actually, something else was coming up for me, like in terms of trauma, because we started off talking about trauma. I believe that trauma gets stuck on different layers. So you have the mental realm, then you have the emotional realm, you have the physical body, because the emotions is actually a physical thing. This has been scientifically proven, at least.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
And I also work with the consciousness, with the spiritual body, and the aura. So I try to work on all these elements. And what I feel is that maybe a psychologist or a therapist just works on the mind, on the mental realm, whereas the mental realm maybe is healed and they understand, but now they need to work on the emotional realm. And then maybe they need to work on the spiritual, on the aura, because I also, and the energy healing that I do, I see energy cords and hooks and stuff in the auras connected to the people that have traumatized them and abused them. And so I think it's a matter of integrating all these different elements and not just focusing on trauma and working through it just with the mind. You need to work with the mind, but with the emotion, with the spiritual. And
yes, when we talk about the mind, we tend to talk about just consciousness, and we don't tend to talk about the actual factors that sometimes can be measured, like the spirit and that emotional connection. Now, now you said you talked about processing emotion, being aware of your body. What isn't that called mindfulness, or can I use that term to describe what you're talking about? Mindfulness, maybe therapeutic interventions, mindfulness coping strategies. Can I use those to talk about what we're talking about now, or it wouldn't fit into the type of work that you do?
I don't think, I mean, yes, that's a tool that can help you. But I think it's something a little bit different. And it's about allowing your emotions to be inside your body and to really feel those emotions inside your body, which most people, especially those who have been traumatized, they don't want to do that. In fact, they're not even inside their body. A lot of them are disassociated. Yeah. And when I see it in energy healing, their spirit or their soul is slightly off, misaligned. So when I bring them back into their body and to feel that emotion, then the emotion and the trauma can be released emotionally, at least.
And what type of, and that's so important, because when someone does experience a traumatic event, not only does, we talked about, it changes their brain neurologically, but it also has physical implications. And studies have been shown that even though a parent experienced trauma, when they have a kid, the kid is also exhibiting certain behaviors, or their brain will match more of their parents. It's almost like they experience the trauma indirectly. There's so many levels to that I don't really want to break it down right now. But I do understand what you're saying when you say helping them understand their body and helping them work with the trauma and getting their spirit aligned, even though those words in westernized society may sound crazy and absurd. There's some truth behind the madness of what you're saying. And obviously, westernized culture doesn't have everything figured out. And I can be a testament to that, living here in this westernized culture where everything is always fast-paced, everything's always moving. You don't even have a second to sometimes just take a deep breath. Really feel what your body is telling you and how it's going. And there's like a misalignment between, okay, I say I'm feeling peacefully, I'm conceptualizing it, but how does my body really feel? And so thank you so much for this so far.
And this is such a good point, because so I'll just give you another example. I see a lot of clients that do yoga and they meditate, and they think that because they are, for example, being triggered. To me, when you're triggered, that's a classic, clear indication that you have things and you need to heal. And came in with the idea that, oh, I need to meditate more. I need to do more yoga. And I'm just saying, no, you don't need to do more meditation. You need to get inside your body. And they were using meditation and spiritual tools to disassociate from their body and their emotions. So they were sitting on top of the emotion rather than
I'm so sorry to interrupt. That was bad. They're misusing the strategies and the coping strategies. They're misusing it.
Yeah, they're using it in a way, and this is understandable because I went through this. Nobody taught me this. I thought the same back in the day, that by meditating more, if I meditate more, and it wasn't, or if I'm more mindful, but it wasn't the case. It was just really about going into the emotion and into the pain and feeling it and processing it inside your body.
What techniques do you use to help them process the emotions within themselves? For example, a lot of times, I'll give you an example. When it comes to trauma, sometimes I have to deal with the immediate issues at hand when I see a client. I work with adolescents. Sometimes I go to the school, I ask for attendance. I'll go to their house, I'll do family sessions, I'll set up parameters that the parents and them to work with. And then it comes to the intense individual sessions. Those a lot of times are harder to do because the client that they have to be willing to go through those things. So it's not always peaches and cream like they put it on TV or like they teach in school. Sometimes it's a lot more difficult than it's portrayed. What techniques or modalities do you use to help the client process the emotion? What type of techniques are you using, or what are you doing?
So different things. It really depends on the client, because some clients come in and they're so open and willing just by my presence, and I just have to pull it out a little bit from my heart. I just pull it out, and they're willing to just process it, and I just have to sit and hold that space for them And that sometimes it's that easy. Other times, for example, if someone is struggling with betrayal or something like that, I will use something like EFT to reframe their perception of the betrayal and forgiveness, for example. So I'll do a little bit of reframing, and once we've reframed it, then they are able to access and to allow themselves to feel that emotion more easily.
And that's important. That's a form of CBT. But you're doing it, I feel, more in an empathic way, almost, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I feel that what they're feeling or what their emotion is, and then maybe I'll do EFT or I'll do NLP to reframe, and then the emotion will eventually come out. Or parts integration. I remember just another example. I had a client who really struggled to connect with her inner child. So then I went straight into parts integration, and as soon as I flipped to the parts integration, it was like immediate. She was able to connect to the emotion, and it's just a different technique to access that emotion.
Hey, Melany, once again, thank you for being on this platform. And I'm going to share something here. The reason I keep myself as Psych Life and I never really give my name, I mean, some people do know my name, my close friends, but it's because I would like to talk about certain things that if I were to expose myself with my name, then I might get backlash. Interviews like these are gold mines because a lot of people are being exposed to something that they're not accustomed to in this side of the world. And with that, now I'm going to this next question, which is you have retreats. And, you know, here in America, it's changing, slowly progressing, but drugs are considered still, you know, we still criminalize drug users, substance.
Yeah.
And it's changing slowly, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And the only drugs that are acceptable are the ones that are being prescribed by the doctors, and people take that authority and they accept it. And those drugs are okay, but the pot the kids smoking on the corner is bad. And yes, pot can be detrimental to kids. I work with kids that suffer from real substance use and abuse, and it can be difficult. Even something as simple as marijuana, if you're smoking 3 times a day, that is addicting. It is affecting their daily life.
Yeah.
But when used properly, it can open avenues. It can open your mind. You know, and with that, I ask this: you have retreats that involve psychedelics. And if I might have misinterpreted your website. Is that right?
I did a retreat this year, actually, to take people to do ayahuasca in Brazil.
Oh, wow. I would have known about that.
So in Brazil, it's I'm half Brazilian, and in Brazil, it's legal. It's completely legal for religious purposes.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why I chose that. Firstly, because I'm half Brazilian, and secondly, because it's legal there. So.
Okay.
And thirdly, just quickly, like ayahuasca changed my life.
Oh yeah. No. I have a personal experience with a psychedelic that really transformed my life from that one day I took. What was your experience like on ayahuasca? Because that drug, not many people have heard about it here in this side of the world, and those that have probably have a very negative connotation attached to it, a very negative stigma.
Yeah, and also because it is being misused now. There's a lot of charlatan shamans. The lady that I go see, she's Argentinian. She's a psychotherapist.
Okay.
So she combines therapy with ayahuasca. So, and I fully trust her. I had huge breakthroughs. I went and I dealt a lot with my childhood traumas. So the first 4 experiences, I went to hell. I went to hell and back, and I never wanted to do it again. But obviously, I had the calling. She calls you. I don't know how to describe it, and I was called again to go. But the second and the third time I went was much more peaceful and much nicer. It was more about insights and gentle. But the first 4 ceremonies were really hard. I never wanted to do it again. But it was the integration and working with what I received that completely changed my life.
The research here is still very raw and premature when it comes to psychedelics and treatment for trauma. And one of the main things is the stigma behind the drug. With ayahuasca, you had a spiritual experience, and sometimes you went to a dark place, hallucination. Someone might categorize it by the symptoms: hallucinations, delusions, cognitive impairment. We can box it up into those terms, right? That experience, if we want to use the westernized mentality. But if we want to use the, I don't want to say Easternized, but more spiritual approach, you were exploring yourself and the demons that were within yourself. That's why you said you went to hell and back.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the next time you were at peace with yourself and you had a great experience, you transformed yourself. That's what. And I don't mean to sum it up like that, but is that, for my audience, is that more or less what happened?
Yeah, and going back to trauma, basically, and this is what I believe, the only way out is through. So I spent years trying to avoid and not face my traumas. I'm not going to go into it here, but I just spent years avoiding it. And that was creating negative patterns in my life. Addictions was one of them. So I had a lot of self-sabotaging patterns. But it was only when I faced these traumas and processed the emotions and went through it. It was horrible. I'm not going to lie. It was not a nice experience, but going through it, it's transformed me. So.
Hey, well, I'm very glad that it transformed you, because I'm sure a lot of people appreciate the work that you're doing, and it's evident once again. And for people that don't know, Melany-Oliver.com. And Melany, thank you so much for being on our platform and informing the public on what exactly is the difference between psychic and an empath, and as well as the type of healing that you're doing, and the type of retreats you're going to, and the way you're handling situations where clients are coming to see you from after seeing a therapist for so many years, such as myself, and what's the disconnect going on. And I appreciate all the topics that you've touched on, okay?
Thank you. Thank you for having me and being open to, discussing this.
No, well, I will be keeping in touch, okay? So thanks again, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
No problem.